Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Death Checks. This is the last show of our 8-round series. Then we'll be taking a 3-week break. And here at the Death Checks, we're all about having the discussions and the conversations that have generally been a little bit feared or maybe greatly feared by the public. And we talk about death, dying, grief, and loss. We're not here to make light of it, but we are here to make it lighter and to ease the conversations, to ease the transitions, to help you to hear us talk about it. Will facilitate your own discussions about it. And the more we open up and talk about the things that we fear, the greater capacity we'll have to live our lives fully in the present. And that's really our wish, and that's really why we're talking about death and dying, is because we deeply desire people to have a full life and to live. And so even though we are the Death Chicks and about death and dying, we're really about life, and it's all part of it. And for some reason, the ending has been ignored, and we turn our back to it, and we're here to help teach you to embrace it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful co-host, Patty Burgess. I'm Misty Lim, and she's going to introduce our guest today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Misty. Thank you. So yes, I can't tell you how happy I am to be talking with Nick Jehlen today from Our Common Practice. Nick and his team we've been in connection for several years now, and have always been fascinated with what Nick and Jethro and Rob are pulling together out there for us as individuals, for healthcare systems. They're really, really changing the way in which we are viewing death and dying and the conversations about that. So our guest today, Nick Jehlen. Nick, I'm going to give you a proper introduction, and you may blush a little bit because I am so fascinated by your background, and I think it lends so much to what it is that you are doing in the death space. So I'm going to introduce you, and then we are going to get right into it. So as I mentioned, our guest today is Nick Jehlen, who's the lead designer of the conversation game, My Gift of Grace, the game that we're going to be playing today. And it's a game that transforms anxiety about death into conversations about living. Very, very important. Now you can find the game, and when you go there to mygiftofgrace.com, make sure you buy, about 10,000 copies or so. I'm sure you've got a discount, don't you, for buying a lot of copies, Nick? I hope so, because we want to sell a lot of them. Good, good, good. So Nick's a founding partner of Our Common Practice, which is a healthcare innovation company that focuses on one of the most pervasive problems in healthcare today. We're talking about it, many people are, and that's the avoided conversations about serious illness and death. Now, the company was founded in 2005 as The Action Mill, and it's owned by 3 founders who I mentioned earlier. Now, what's really interesting about Nick and his background is that he's been creating really innovative social interventions for the past 20 years, and these interventions are informed by his ongoing study of Gandhian nonviolent methods, as in Gandhi, including research into how popular movements create change on a societal level. And he really focuses on bridging barriers to communication and the power of action to move participants to rethink those conflicts and really come to very lasting and ethical resolutions. One of the other things that you need to know about Nick is that in 93 and 94 he traveled to Haiti on human rights observer missions, interviewed members of the resistance to the military coup, and his reporting on those interviews was published in the Boston Globe. And so, as you can see, sort of a trend here in terms of community organizing and really changing paradigms. From 2006 to 2010, Nick was also the lead designer and organizer of the Enough Fear campaign. And what that did was set up public phone hotlines between the U.S. and Iran, and used online tools to facilitate large-scale citizen diplomacy between Iranians and Americans through Facebook. So, wow. I mean, if anybody comes to this topic of death and dying from that background, seriously, for what you've done, Nick, this should be a cakewalk, this conversation. But I know it's not, and that's why you're doing what you do. Nick lives in New York City, and I will say, Nick, you are 90 miles from greatness. Get back here to Philly. That's how far Philly and New York is. So we always like to say 90 miles to greatness. That is, New York is to Philly. And we're glad to have you here today. Thanks so much for being here. And we want to hear more about how this background of yours has really informed what you're doing now, because it sounds like there's so much of a tie-in. If you can share with us. Welcome.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. So yeah, my background and the background of the other partners at Common Practice, as you said, there's a deep background in community organizing, and a combination of that community organizing work and design to create tools that bridge boundaries, that help people have conversations that are challenging, to talk to people that they might perceive as being opposed to them. And that really comes from our study of Gandhian nonviolence and about really breaking down barriers and thinking differently about people who we think of as the opposition. So that's a very important thing to us in all of our work. And actually, death and loss has been woven into that from the very beginning. For as long as I've been working with Jethro Heiko, one of the other founders, who brought this sense of the importance of grief and loss to this work. It's always been in the background, and more recently, in the last 3 years or so, grief, loss, death, all of that has moved really into the foreground. But even when we started off working in the early 90s together, we were always talking about what happens when groups of people experience loss, what happens when a neighborhood changes, when a neighborhood goes through a tough time, when families deal with loss, not just death, but other kinds of loss, losing a job, or when organizations lose a big contract or anything like that. And on some level, that's what happened to us, that we had been working doing social change and design for many years and had a very big contract that we lost. And our response to that, I think, was informed by all the work we had done with our clients, and we said, we're going to stop and take ourselves seriously and take this grief seriously, that we had gone through a pretty serious emotional thing with a client, and we wanted to spend some time working on that. And the more we thought about it, the more we talked to people, the more it seemed clear that we needed to move this thing that had been in the background, all of this work on grief and loss, move that to the foreground, because that was a place that we felt like we could do work that was meaningful to us and meaningful to other people. And that's really the origin of how we moved into a space where now we used to be a general consulting firm where we would consult on almost any kind of project that people brought to us, and now all we do is focus on grief, loss, end of life, and serious illness, and the conversations particularly that surround those things.
Sure. Well, it makes sense too, because once you hone in and you find out what it is that you want to focus on, it may seem like it's just a section of what you're doing as far as the all of the rest of your work. But when you get into it, you start to realize the breadth and the depth of what's happening here with grief, loss, death, and dying, and so many places you can go with it.
Yeah. And
it seems like how you started, I think Misty got bumped off, and she may be trying to get back in, so we'll just keep going, and I know she'll that's the Google gremlins out there that sometimes happen, so she'll pop back in. But so one of the ways in which you thought that this conversation could happen would be in a game format, which of course is the impetus to create this game. And what is it that made you decide that was a way to do it? Tell us a little bit more about how that got started and
Sure.
how that's being used.
So one of the things that we always do in any project is try and come up with a central action that people can take to really experience the world differently. And that was really what we were trying to do when we started off designing the game. We didn't actually, the original project was not to design a game, it was to design a tool for conversations. And we have a whole history of designing tools for conversations, like the Enough Fear project, where we were having conversations between Iranians and Americans, but lots of other smaller scale tools too, to help people have conversations that are challenging. So that was the original brief that we gave ourselves. We want to design a tool that will allow a family to talk about this topic that people say they want to talk about but often never actually get to. And we have a whole design process that we go through when we are creating this kind of tool, and we always are bringing in outside experts. So in this case, we added Dr. Carl Alsweed, who is a physician and somebody that we had talked to a lot. He's actually had a specialty in doing advanced care planning in medicine. So we brought him into the studio and spent a day basically talking about where's the right spot to apply the tools that we're going to create. And what we came up with was, we try and get as specific as we can. We wanted to create a game that would be played on Thanksgiving after dessert. That was the idea. It's the time when, there's a family.
That was the idea.
Yeah, so some family members are all gathered around. It's the right people. It's a time when people often play games, and we sort of focused in on a game because we noticed that if you have something like a game that you're doing, it often frees you up to have conversations, to talk about all sorts of different things. So, when there's a reason people get together to have poker night, it's not necessarily just because they want to play poker. It's because they want to have a conversation. Right. And poker is a good example of helping that.
I was going to say, good point, too, because now that everybody's got a tryptophan high from the turkey, people are a little bit more eased and chilled out, so that maybe there's an opening.
Exactly. Right. They're not going to work today, probably. It's a good opening for this kind of conversation. And we just basically decided that we wanted to create a game that would sort of encourage the kind of conversation that we thought would be useful. And I think very early on we realized that we didn't necessarily know what the answer to that question was, what kind of conversation is going to be useful. So we did a lot of interviewing of experts in the field. And as importantly, we did a lot of testing where we would bring, and Patty, you were part of one of these groups that we brought together and played the game and sort of tried out different questions, tried out different game mechanics. And that was a 6-month process of testing and refining and changing things. And I think if you looked at the game at the beginning and at the end, they're entirely different things. The only thing they have in common is they're a set of cards. But besides that, it's a very different game. And at the end of that 6 months, we launched it, and the response has been fantastic ever since. It's just the thing that's most rewarding about creating a tool like this is when people use it in ways that you don't expect, and we keep getting more and more of that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know when I was part of this gameplay, I was part of a small group, which was so interesting. And what I also found is different demographics. Each time you play the game, you get more information about the folks with whom you're playing. So I originally was playing with a younger group, and when they were talking about, for example, maybe one of the questions might have been, who was going to be caring for you or helping you at the end of life, it was usually parents in that scenario, whereas I certainly don't have parents, so my experience was different. Yeah. Then to see when you took it to the Reading Terminal Market, where you had maybe a couple of hundred people playing the game, it was fascinating to see the interaction. But the one thing that I noticed about the whole thing, and I want to say, because when people think about these conversations, they don't necessarily want to get started with them, even if it's the perfect time after Thanksgiving. But the one thing that was always so palpable in the room was a sense of joy, of lightness, a lot of laughter. Yeah. And when it can create that, what could be so bad about a conversation? And if you were just to be a fly on the wall and to watch that, the interactions were so rich. And it was beautiful to see. And I'm sure after all of this rolling around in your head, it was nice to see it in play.
It is. The most satisfying part of my job is getting to watch people play, especially a room full of people who, maybe got brought there by a family member, or maybe somebody, a friend from work dragged them there, and they're sort of not sure whether this is going to be a good idea, and I don't know what this is going to be like, but maybe I'll stay for 15 minutes. And then you start to hear this building of the conversation, and very quickly you get to the point where it's hard to interrupt the games. when we train people on how to run these events, one of the most difficult things is helping them figure out how to stop a game, because people don't want to stop, and we always get complaints, no matter how long the events are, that they want to keep playing. Well, another hour would be good, and that's not something you generally hear people saying about end-of-life conversations. They think, oh, well, let's get this over with, as opposed to, I don't want to go on to the next thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And we have Misty back. I knew you would be back. You wouldn't leave us forever.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I don't think she can hear us. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear
glad
me
you're
okay?
back.
Yeah. Good,
Yes,
thanks. So it sounds like you guys are rolling along. So I'll let you roll with it. I don't know what I've missed.
Well, we were just...
I'm sure.
We're talking about what was so amazing, how this game came about, and what the purpose was. And when you gather a bunch of people together who may not necessarily think they want to talk about death and dying, the next thing you know, they're playing this game with a lot of laughter and a lot of joy, a lot of connection. And most importantly, they're starting to think for themselves the kinds of things that they probably have never talked about. Is that true, Nick, would you say?
We hear that almost every game, and we're doing a lot of games lately with healthcare staff, so people who know each other at work but don't necessarily know very much about each other. And even in those games where coworkers are playing, people talk about stuff that they haven't talked about even with their closest family members, and I think that's how we know that the game works, is that it sets up a dynamic where people don't just jump in and trust other people around the table, but build trust slowly. So they get to the point where they say, you know, this is something that I've been wanting to say, but I'm going to try out sharing it here. And one of the game mechanics that is built in is the reinforcement of that. When somebody says something that is really vulnerable and revealing something about themselves that people recognize as a little bit scary to talk about, there's this immediate reinforcement. Everybody around the table is saying, me too, I've got that same fear, or that's something that I wouldn't have expected, or that's something that I don't actually think about, but now I should maybe think about it. Which is, it's incredibly satisfying to hear that kind of thing, particularly from people, who are coworkers or even strangers. That's a really fascinating thing, to watch a group of strangers play and talk about things that they haven't even talked about, maybe with their spouses. So, yeah, it's a very satisfying thing.
Sure. Wonderful. Well, what I thought we would do is, yep, I know you got bumped off there, Miss. What I'd like to do is perhaps get us started with playing a little bit of this game so that we can share with people that it really won't bite and it won't hurt to play this game. And Missy, I don't know if you're there, if you're still there and can hear us or not. She may have. Yeah, I know, but she looks like she's. Oh, there she is. Okay, good, because she was in a frozen-looking smile there for a second, so you never know if you really froze or if you're there. But that would be great if we could get started on that. And what I also, while we're getting ready to play this, what I think is so interesting too is you've done, I think there's been some white papers on this conversation leading to actually the ability for people to take what they've been talking about and now put it into action. Because for people to go take a form right online, let's say they go to take right online, we can get any number of tools to do this. But if you're not brought along to these answers to these questions in a way that feels comfortable and safe, the likelihood that you're going to do it is nil. And your game, I understand, really the chances that people are going to actually do their healthcare directives.
So we were lucky that a group at Penn State Hershey Medical Center, is a research team led by Dr. Lauren Van Scoy. She got interested very early on in studying the game as a tool for advanced care planning. So the first two studies that she I mean, really, like within a few weeks of us releasing the game, we were in her office and talking about her interest in doing this game. And she's a completely independent entity, which is really nice because we get actual honest feedback about the work that we're doing. So she actually ran a series of games. They did very detailed analysis of what people talked about, and then did follow-up surveys. So the two things that she's looking at are what people do after people play the game, and that was a real surprise to them, that the number of people who went on, 74% of people who played the game in their study went on to do an advanced care planning activity without any prompting. And then the second thing, and
that's amazing.
It's definitely a lot more than even we were expecting. We were really excited to see that, and I think it sort of points to this idea that once you start to have the conversation, it gets easier. And it gets easier to think about and talk about with other people. And then the other thing is the white paper that you'll find on our website on the multiple goals framework. And so the other thing that she's been able to show us is that she's been able to really dissect what's going on in these conversations and talk about why the conversations are getting done.
Sorry, we've got... Oh, I apologize. I just want to say, Julie, hi. We've got Julie on with us, who's going to help us play the game.
Hi,
Julie, do you have any headsets? Do you have any headset that might help the feedback?
I think it was because I had two screens open. I don't have a headset. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Hey, why don't we? What we'll do is if there's sometimes when there's a lot of people on a hangout. Just the ambient noise from our backgrounds can get in the way of the people talking. So how about everyone who's on the Hangout can just mute out. I'm going to invite Heidi and Mark are also here, and I think they're willing to jump in. So
that's great.
You know, it looks like we might have 5 or so of us. So come on in, Heidi and Mark, and we'll get going with the game. And I think I'll just ask that if you're not talking, just...
You're muted. You're muted there.
Oh, geez. Here I was like, anyhow, how funny is that? Doing the demo, and yeah. So anyhow,
and
Julie,
actually
if you forget
muting
how
yourself.
to mute, you just move your cursor to the middle top of your screen, and you'll see a little microphone icon with a line through it, and that will mute you out. So, yeah. So and
Nick,
Nick's gonna guide us in gently, because we're all just shaking their boots. We don't really want to talk about these uncomfortable situations, so he's going to be our gentle guide today on the Desk Chick Show, and we'll see how uncomfortable he can make us.
Or how uncomfortable.
There you go.
We'll see.
That's great.
So,
and
shall I just give a quick introduction to how it works?
Sure.
Okay. So this is the game. It comes in a little box. It looks like any other game box. In fact, it's manufactured at our manufacturer is in Indiana, and they make lots of the games that you see on the shelves at your local bookstore or at your local toy store. And the two key components of the game are a set of chips. So in an actual physical game where we're all in the same place, everybody gets a stack of these. These are called thank you chips. I'll explain how those work in a second. And then the second thing is a set of cards with questions on them. There's 47 question cards. And people get a little bit intimidated sometimes by the fact that there's 47 questions. Very frequently, people will get through 5 questions, 6 questions, even in playing for a couple of hours. So we're not going to get through very many questions today, and in most games you don't get through very many, although we have heard that there have been a few marathon games of 4 to 5 hours where people actually play and get through 47 questions, but that's not the expectation. The idea is that you play this over and over and get a chance to answer different kinds of questions each time. So very quickly, and I think we're actually going to try and do something like this even though we're not physically in the same place. So a thank you chip works like this. Everybody starts with an equal number of thank you chips, and you give a thank you chip to another player whenever they do something that you appreciate. So obviously we can't reach through the screen today and do that. However, I think a simple just hand motion of if you are appreciative of something somebody has said, you can actually just say, I want to give you a thank you chip for that after they've finished speaking. And that reinforces gratitude within the game, and we've actually found that playing with thank you chips is significantly different than playing without them because of this sort of underlying current of gratitude going on underneath it. The thank you chip really makes gratitude into like a currency and creates an economy of gratitude within the game, so that's a pretty important part.
And
That's lovely.
I can say, as someone who has played the game and been in the room with people, there is something very encouraging if you've shared something you haven't really shared with many people before, and all of a sudden these people are giving you thank you chips. You're like, wow, this is great. I want to share some more. So
yeah,
absolutely,
and people use them in all
wonderful
sorts
way
of ways.
to reinforce.
It reinforces that, and it also, people sometimes make jokes out of them, which are not something that we expected, but every once in a while we'll have somebody give an answer and they don't get thank you chips, and it's this very funny moment where we'll be like, what do you mean? I just shared something really personal and I don't get a thank you chip for that? It's, you know, it lightens the experience of it. So that was a really fun thing that we didn't expect that at all, but when we started testing it out, it became clear that the thank you chips were really important. So
very good.
Among this group,
I also wanted to introduce you, Nick, to Heidi and Mark. Heidi and Mark, it seems like everybody's muted, so if Heidi and...
Okay, hello, here we are.
Yes. They're joining us from Italy, so we're quite fortunate.
Great.
They're in Italy. Heidi and Mark, oh, so good to see you. And Julie in Canada.
Look at that, we are right in the middle of death here. Can you see that?
Right in the middle of what?
Of death.
Of death?
Yeah.
That looks more like sleeping.
No.
Oh no, their cat is really close, and I remember Heidi. I think you posted that watching our show has really helped you make it easier for the transition of your cat. So we're really honored that you're here with Mark, and that your cat's here too, and we'll just send some little silent prayers of blessing for a peaceful passing for your cat, and thank you for having him with you right now.
Yes, thank you.
Will be today or tomorrow, I guess, because it was much, so I think it is good that he gets this beneficial energy.
Yeah.
Yes, very, very good.
I think this is something that comes up a lot actually in these conversations as people talk a lot about their pets, about how important they are, and about the experience of losing a pet, which is can be a very difficult thing. My wife and I had we had 4 cats when we started the process of making the game. We have 2 cats now.
Yeah.
And a good friend of ours, their cat died almost exactly a week ago, and it is an incredibly difficult thing, but it also is a time when you get to learn about the people around you and about your relationship with a pet, which is in many ways can be an incredibly personal and deep relationship. So I'm appreciative of you joining us at this time, which is a pretty important time.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
thank you.
And I don't have comment tracker up right now, but Neil Brown just sends his regards. He says, I'm sending a thank you chip for the show. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks. And Mark, you were saying something?
Oh, yes. You mentioned it helps the investigation of your relationship with the pet, but it's also a chance to investigate our relationship with life and death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, that's absolutely true. So, so here's what we're going to do. So I've explained that there's these thank you chips, and you give a thank you chip, and we'll just do that with our voices. If someone says or does something that you appreciate, when they're done speaking, you can just say, I want to give you a thank you chip, and that'll be the easiest way for us to do that. And then we've got a whole dynamic built into the game to give everybody a chance to share, because that's something that happens a lot in any kind of conversation where people have stuff that they really want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is we're going to actually play a round or 2 of the game. What I'll do is I'll read the question out loud. Then I would ask everybody to write down your own answer, and I'll do this too. For my answers change each time. So if you have a pen, just to be able to write, everyone's going to get a pen. Good? as soon as those people get back, we'll explain the rest. It adds a little bit of time, but it makes sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, which is really important. Oh, Misty's going to go get a pen. I think I have a pen.
Very good. Misty, I think there it goes. We're all appearing and disappearing at different times.
It takes a little time to get set up. Okay, so we all have a pen and we all have paper. So what I'm going to do is read. I picked some random questions for the game, and I'm going to read one of the questions out loud. When you are done writing, so that usually in the game you put down your pen and that's the signal, but because everybody is sort of small, what I'm going to ask you to do is hold up your hand just to let us know that you're done writing. And we'll go in order. I've got written down an order of people to go, and we'll just go around in a circle. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Oh,
I see Mark is not back yet, and
Mark's going to get a pen
not
or
back
paper.
yet.
Oh,
So
I think they
we
each
may-
get paper. There we go. Excellent. Okay.
There's Julie, and I think Mark on his way back?
Nope, he's there. I see him. There he is.
Oh, okay. Good. There you go.
Okay. So this is exciting. This is really the first time we've done a game of My Gift of Grace online, so we'll see how it goes. But the one other thing that I always say when I lead a game like this is if you have any trouble, if anything's going on that you need some support from, raise your hand. Part of my role as the facilitator in any of these games is to provide whatever support you need. So that can mean we can stop the game and talk about something that's come up for you, or we can decide that we're going to do something else, or whatever it is. Part of the role of the facilitator is to sort of take care of the group. But it's also to play, so I'm going to play along. So I'm going to start with question 5, because question 5 is a particularly usually gets people thinking a lot. So question 5 is, if you needed help going to the bathroom today, who is the first person you would ask to help you, and who would you never be able to ask? So write down your answers and hold up your hand when you're done.
Nick, repeat that again. The first person you'd ask and the last person.
The first person and the person you'd never be able to ask. Patty's still writing. Misty's writing. Oh, it's fine. Whenever you're done, hold up your hand. Okay. Heidi and Mark, are you still writing? Are you done?
We're done.
Good. Okay. So we go in clockwise order, and I don't know if geographically this is going to be correct, but I'm just going to call out names and have you go in the same order each time. So I'm going to ask Julie to go first, if you wouldn't mind. So you're going to share your answer, and then we'll move on to the next person. And when we're done going around, if people want to make comments or ask questions, they can too. So Julie, you want to go first?
Sure. If I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself, the first person I would ask is my life partner, my husband Earl. Who could I never ask? Or, yeah.
Who would be the last person?
The last person I would ask. I honestly can't think of anybody. So, not that I'm going to ask everybody. I don't know if I had to put them in rank order, but people who don't live near me, I mean, I'm obviously not going to wait for them to get here. You know, so. But as far as, you know, people who are pretty close to me, I suppose I could ask my friends. I'm trying to think of anybody who's so repulsed by that. I can't think of anybody that I couldn't ask. I mean, if I had to, I'd go out and ask my neighbors, I guess. But if I could do that, I wouldn't need their help in the bathroom. Anyway, there you go. There's my answer. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
Excellent. Patty?
Very good. Well, gosh, the people there's going to be a party in my bathroom because there are several people who I would ask. Believe it or not, the first person I wrote down was Misty. And Misty, I don't even know, we haven't even met. Would you take me to the bathroom, please?
Let's go, Chickie. I'm there for you.
I get this feeling that she would be, and so for whatever reason, I feel like the females in my life. Then I thought Julie. And then I thought, I have a dear friend, ex-sister-in-law, who we always said if we were the last person, if we were dying, we would want each other there. So I've got 3 or 4 people that would gladly, I think, take me to the bathroom. The last person, and it's more of a vibe, I think of, well, it would be my father-in-law. Well, 1, because he's my father-in-law, but 2, because he's an engineer. He's very specific about he's very fastidious, and I just think that would wig him out beyond belief. But I would ask him into the party with the rest of the girls. So that's my answer.
Excellent. Misty, you want to go next?
Yeah, the first one is easy. It would be my daughter, Hannah, and that's simply because I've been going to the bathroom with her since she was little, and and she's still very little, and sometimes she's still, Mom, can you come into the bathroom with me? And I might protest. I might be in the middle of reading who knows, but reading a book or something. But I'll often go. Or in the middle of the night. So we're comfy in the bathroom together. And the last person would probably be either my father or my sister, and my father is just he's my father, and we're kind of close, but the bathroom might be a little bit too close. And my sister, again, we're kind of close, but not. I don't know if I'd want her helping and assisting me in that way. We don't have that kind of relationship. So, but my daughter is there for me as I've been for her. So thank you.
Great. Mark, do you want to go next?
Sure. Well, that was easy. Who would I ask first? Would be Heidi here, of course, because we spend a lot of time in the bathroom together now. Some of it is a lot of fun. And so that's a no-brainer. But who would I not want here? I'm just thinking of, people around us here who really wouldn't fill the bill. And we have this old place that often needs help with the plumbing, and I would not like my plumber to be here to help me with that.
Okay.
Well, he could certainly keep the toilet working, that's for sure.
There you go.
And you?
For me, it's more or less the same.
And Heidi?
One is him, and the other, yeah, the first person would be him.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, if there's real need, I would ask everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't feel so comfortable, but I also thought one of these workers who sometimes come here and then they are men, I would have a little bit, reserve to that. But if it's really needed and I cannot do without, I wouldn't have a problem.
There you go.
And I'll go.
Thank you.
I'll go last. And before I go, I want to give Julie thank you, Chip, because my answer is actually very much similar to yours. And I love watching people answer this question because that second one is always a bit of a struggle. So my answer is Amber, my wife, is the first person I would ask, and she actually had a very minor surgery yesterday, so she's laid up in bed in the next room. So there's a little bit of caretaking going on in my household, although very little compared to what a lot of people are doing. But it's always I think it's actually a useful thing to have a little bit of practice doing caretaking for the people around you, because very frequently we will wind up doing pretty serious caretaking. And when I started playing this game, I had a whole list of people who I wouldn't ask. But that's one of the advantages of playing over and over with people who have experience with this. So my answer is also that I would ask anybody because I've gotten to learn from people who have had this actual experience and talked about what that experience was like. So so my answer to the second one is no one. Oh.
Yay!
Julie?
I just wanted to add that I learned from experience after some serious surgeries that had me quite compromised for several days. I learned that the initial dread that I felt before I went into that situation, I was like, oh my gosh, bathing and the toilet part and all of that. But oh gosh, I was like, oh yes, please bathe me and help me, all of it. I was so happy to have the assistance. Once I was in that position, it completely changed my perspective on this issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah. This is.
Thank you, Julie. Here's a thank you chip for you.
A happy chip back to you. Let the chips fall all around. I liked all your chips.
This is one of the great things about playing the game with different generations and also different people who have gone through different experiences. You learn huge amounts about how to cope and what to expect in lots of different situations. And it's not, sometimes it's the thing that you're most scared of is actually not going to be a big deal, but something you hadn't thought of is going to be much, much more important. So.
Yeah. Nick, I have a question.
Yeah.
What happens if you use up all your thank you chips? Then you just can't give any more thanks?
So generally, the thing about the thank you chips is that people are giving them to each other. So there's some people are building them up and some people are having less. So generally, anytime you get a thank you chip, it gets added to your pile. But at the end of the game, you wind up with different numbers of thank you chips, and that's actually we're not going to do this today, but in a in-person game of My Gift of Grace, there is a winner, and the winner is either the person with the most chips at the end or the least chips, and that's determined by the flip of a coin. So the thank you chips are actually the mechanism to determine the winner, although most people are not necessarily paying attention to trying to be a winner during the game. But it does sometimes. There have been games where people have gotten kind of competitive about it. It's part of the sort of dynamic of the game. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Does anyone else have anything they want to share before we do the next question?
Well, no, I think I'd like to give. I'd like to give a thank you chip to all of you who are brave enough, and maybe this is inappropriate use of chips, but to say I'd let anyone take me to the bathroom. I think that's that just shows a level of comfort that I admire, and then one to Patty too, because I just love to take you to the bathroom, Patty, when you're in need. That would be fun. I know we'd just be laughing. You would be laughing so hard you'd pee yourself. So hopefully we'd get to the toilet before we started laughing too hard.
There you go. There you go. Oh, that's great.
So Heidi and Mark, I saw that you were still hearing an echo when I'm talking. Is that right?
Yeah, I was hearing a repetition, a very low repetition. But when all the others are muted, it shouldn't be. So
Okay. Well, let's all try and mute when we're not talking, and we'll do our best. And I know that audio can be a distraction whenever you're using technology, so we'll do our best to minimize that. And if it's okay, we'll do one more. Let's try one more question. Is that good? Okay. So the next question I'm going to ask, this is question 9 in the game, is what is the first memory that comes to mind when you think about physical pain? Misty, you still working?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sorry. Don't want to rush you.
No. Oh no, my hand's up. I'm not still working my hands up. I don't know. Maybe
Okay.
you can't see it.
Nope.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It's hard to see sometimes in that little film strip.
We're learning about how to do an online version of this.
Yeah, this is good.
So if we're all ready, I'm going to ask Patty to go first this time.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? I should be unmuted. So it's not necessarily a first memory, but it's the one that popped in because it's been most recent. About a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with long-standing Lyme disease. And it was kind of insidious because I had been feeling all these very odd symptoms, and nothing was gearing up. So they did a test, even though I'd had tests before, it came out negative. This one came out very positive. And I started on a regimen of just awful number of antibiotics, 3 different ones, very high doses, stacked over a couple of weeks, so that by the end I was on just major stuff. And the last one that they stacked ended up having like projectile vomiting. And I just thought, oh my God, like even though I knew that this would be over at some point, although we don't know if it's really over, we don't know if it goes dormant or if it's, I just remember being at a really low point thinking, how would I live if this doesn't change? How would I live my life if I can't get out of this place? And this place felt so dark. It felt so hard. And it was just a really rough place to be for a pretty long time, though I mustered through. It was not fun, and not that pain is fun, but I recognized how it made me think about how often people are in this place and there is no change for them. It made me think about the patients that I've worked with as a volunteer who are not only having pain, but losing many of their pleasures and their comforts and the people they love. And in some weird way, I felt blessed that this was what it was at this time. But it was pretty dark, and I'm so appreciative of my family, my husband, and everybody who was so supportive, because it wasn't a great place to be. But that was, I'm through it now. I still have some effects, I believe, but I don't take that pain for granted at all. So.
Here's a thank you, Chip, for that.
Thank you.
Story. Misty, would you
I don't know if I shared that.
Yeah, well, I'd like to start by giving Patty a thank you, Chip, for sharing that, and that's something we don't often hear about, is the people's direct experience with pain. When I was asked this question, I thought, I don't really have memory of pain. Do we? I don't know. It's strange. I don't have memory of pain, and then I had to really think hard, and it was like, oh, well, of course, childbirth.
Yeah,
that was childbirth, and then even now when I think about it, it was after the birth. It was the first week after birth, and nursing and going to the bathroom was excruciating, and I had no idea, and I thought, my goodness, why didn't anyone tell me? And if they told me, would I have ever believed them? But that was something, you just live through, and thank goodness at the time I was very blessed and had a bundle of joy to keep the smile, to balance out the other side of the severe pain I was experiencing.
Thanks. Mark, do you want to go next?
Sure. I had to really think a while before I could remember one. It's going back into childhood. And then it occurred to me that because of the fright involved, it was most memorable, and that was getting the wind knocked out of me after I fell out of a tree. Whop! and it, you know, just I suppose we all know what I mean by having the wind knocked out. Just complete evacuation of the lungs, and you just can't breathe. And though I was quite young, it was extremely frightening, probably more so than the actual pain involved. But there were thoughts of, I'm gonna die, you know, at that moment. And so it was really compounded by the thoughts and the concepts that accompanied me with that. And of course I've felt excruciating tooth pain much, you know, as an adult and so forth, but not as dramatic even as getting the wind knocked out of me when I was so young. No.
Interesting. Heidi, you want to go next?
Yeah, for me, the most painful events I had was all, in this case, it was not childbirth, but it was an abortion. And it was really horrible, horrible pain. And generally, when I had menstruation, I was knocked out at least one day a month or more. So this was the sort of pain where you think you have to go through, where the time sort of stands still and you cannot think anything else. This is only the pain is in your consciousness. So I found that with the time ways to overcome that, to meditation and stuff, but it was always very, very, very painful. So I have a good memory of pain, and I have a good tolerance of pain for that.
Wow. I'm going to go next, and then Julie will go. So I have a different answer to this each time I play the game. The first thing that came to mind this time was I had a kidney stone about 2 years ago that I have a long history of back pain, and I mistook what it was at first and thought that I was having back pain, and actually it was a great relief to me that it was a kidney stone, because I have a sort of similar experience as Patty described, of just the overwhelmingness of pain and not really feeling like, just the frustration of it, of not feeling like it's ever going to change and not really understanding whether I could go on without it. So, you know, like a kidney stone is an incredibly painful thing. However, it ends. And my experience with back pain is that it keeps coming back. So, so that was the first thing that came to mind for me. Julie, do you want to go? Oh, Julie, you're muted still.
Okay, that wasn't intentional. I'd like to give everybody a tip. You did a great job describing, and I relate so much to what each of you are describing. So I had a hard time with this because it wasn't my pain that came up for me. When you said your first memory or most vivid memory of pain, what comes up first wasn't my own pain. It was the pain that my partner suffers from. He had a hip operation that didn't go well many years ago, and he continues to have very daily pain with that, and just being with that, witnessing that is harder for me than my own chronic pain, which I live with pain every day. I have for a long time, many years. I've had 2 back operations, so Nick, you can probably resonate with some of that. I'm left with some residual pain that I manage daily, and yet that's so much easier or less. I don't know. It's my background, and you know, that just goes on every day of my life. It's so much harder for me to witness pain than it is to be in pain. That's just, you know, I don't know. That's how it. If I care for somebody, It really hurts to know they're in pain. One of my daughters has a real bad sore throat right now. Oh my gosh, it just tears me up, you know. I'm okay with my own pain. Yeah, so I don't know. There you go. That's it.
Wow. We've only done 2 questions, but I feel like actually this is a great demonstration of what happens during this game, because you just think about the range of answers to that question. You know, some maybe you might have expected, but I don't think having the wind knocked out of you as a child and thinking about other people's pain versus your pain, the experience that each of us brings to that, I think, I am really humbled by these kinds of conversations, because people, share all sorts of really personal stuff in a way that I don't think we do enough. This isn't necessarily a conversation you could have every day, but we could certainly have more of them. And I certainly learn a huge amount every time I get to listen in or play the game with other people. So I also have a thank you, Chip, for each of you for the diversity of answers and the willingness to share them with us. I'm moved by it. So thank you all. Yeah.
Nick, I tell you, I want to share the same thank you, Chip, for Heidi, for Julie, for Misty, and Nick, for you. I mean, we're all these people who have connected in many different ways before, and maybe we're all breathing the same air when we talk about, death, dying, grief, and loss. But I feel like our connection from this is at a new level, because, we've all shared something that one question has brought out for all of us, and have such compassion for what everybody was going through individually at a time that was very, very rough. So, my gosh, thank you for showing up here. And Heidi and Mark, you guys are such amazing supporters of this show, and you continue to give and give, and thank you for sharing very personal information. And Julie, you just amaze me all the time, because she is like the other death chickie. And yes, I'm really moved as well. Oh, and wait, that was funny. I was going to say, if I could have, when Misty had her pain of childbirth, she got a bundle of joy at the end. I would have killed to be pregnant having Lyme disease, so I could have had a bundle of joy at the end, but I don't think that was in the cards for me.
Mm-hmm. Nick, it's been absolutely fabulous, and I'm thinking that it might be fun, and we can talk about this after the show, but to perhaps do something like this once a month and advertise and just let people know they can come and be part of the conversation or listen in, because it creates this amazing common ground and common practice, as is the future creating name of your company, that where when you get together with people and talk like this, there's a kind of a magical, miraculous thing that happens where Patty mentioned there's a sense of connection and a sense of peace, and I can imagine having these conversations with your family, or with healthcare provider teams, and just the leaps and bounds that it feels like we've made internally, and that was only with 2 questions. So big thanks to everyone. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh yes, it was a question, and it was talking about pain, and I'm wondering if this happens in the game. I wanted to take it to the next step and ask, so when you had that great pain, what did you do to relieve it? Or I wanted to take the question and extend it and go deeper, and I'm wondering if people do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, people take these questions and the conversations that happen during them and go in all sorts of directions. There are people who stick to the game and play each question very, very carefully. And then there are other people who you come around an hour and a half later and they're like, oh, we lost track, and we're on question 3, but we started talking about something completely different, and that was just a good conversation. And either one of those is a perfectly good way to do it. I think Mark has his hand up.
Yes, Mark, you're muted.
Yes, okay. We were talking about pain, and I noted as we went around that we had 2 elements of pain. We have the pain, which is real, and we feel it, and we also have the suffering that came from the stories we tell ourselves about the pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And of course, this is, I was immediately reminded of the very basic tenet of Buddhism, you know, that life is suffering. You know, we can all feel pain, but we don't all have to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
This goes into the question which Misty asked, no? How do we handle the pain? How do we create structures for handle it?
Yeah.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Opening up interesting avenues.
Yeah, and I think you get to share, when you hear other people's experiences, you get to learn about different ways to approach things like pain, which I think is the most useful part of the game. You know, it may be fun to play and interesting questions and things like that, but hearing other people's answers, I think, is the most useful thing that happens during the game.
Absolutely. And there's, 45 more questions, not that you'd go through them, which is why it's always great to come back to the game and play. I mean, we'd be here for the marathon, but it's always great to come back. When I've played it a couple of times, I've gotten different questions. I've been with different people. It sparks different kinds of reactions and information, things I never thought of. So it's really the gift that keeps on giving, as well as the gift of grace too, Nick. So wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Before we go out, can you just share how people can get in touch with you and the services that A Common Practice provides?
Yeah, so there's 2 different ways to do it. The first is if you are just a member of the public and want to get a copy of the game, you can go to mygiftofgrace.com and order it there. We ship all around the world. And if you're interested in the services that we provide for healthcare organizations and stuff like that, you can go to Our Common Practice, OURCommonPractice.com. And you can always reach me at nick@ourcommonpractice.com.
Beautiful. We could have kept on going, Nick, but we are going to wrap it up. Why don't we take us out? If everybody wants to stay on afterwards, we can chat in the green room. But I am going to say goodbye. Misty, do you have anything else to share before we head out?
I do have one thing, and I'd like if someone would test this for me. I've done a little website updating, and on my website, bittersweetblessing.com, if you go to the tab, there's a tab now that says the Death Chick. So it's kind of in beta, but there is a form there that you can enter your email address. So it's a place where I can begin to collect people who are interested in learning more about the Death Chicks and perhaps being updated to our shows or what's coming up our next round or stuff like that. I'm not going to send a flood of emails. I'm not very good at sending emails, actually, so don't be fearful of me flooding your inbox. But I would like it if you go and put your name and email address, and that will allow me to test the system. So thanks, everyone, for being here. And Nick, it's been absolutely wonderful. I can't really looking forward to doing this again, and I hope it becomes part of something that's perhaps a regular practice on the Death Chicks, is to play this game on a more regular basis. So thanks
Thank you
so
all
much.
very much.
All right. Take good care, everyone.